Hello, cruel, cruel world. My name is Dr. Tiernan Darnton. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. Tiernan Darnton is a student who's been jailed for life with a minimum term of 15 years over the murder of his own step-grandmother, who was 94 years old, after he deliberately set a fire in her flat. He initially literally got away with murder, but he was later caught. There's lots of twists and tales in the story, and he was caught because he admitted to friends that he'd killed her during a game of truth or dare. Now, why am I talking to you about this? I was literally recently featured in a documentary on Channel 5 about this case. Shout out Channel 5, shout out Title Roll, who made the documentary. Obviously, it's a horrific case, and I can't imagine the terror that the poor victim must have gone through in her last moments. But also, from my perspective, it's very interesting in terms of the aspects of Darnton and his background, his characteristics, his personality traits, etc., which I analysed in that documentary and which I will analyse for you good people. So for this video, I'm going to show you the intro to the documentary, then I'm going to explain the background of the case, then I'm going to show you my own psychological analysis, the same that I did in the documentary, and then maybe an outro or something. Okay, enough foreplay, let's get started.
I see flames coming from the front bedroom.
From the distance, I could see fire. Please tell me it's not Mary.
How's Mary going to get out? Is Mary in there?
I can't even think about it. It's horrible.
Mary was 94 years old, she had dementia, and she was a very heavy smoker.
We lost a loving mother, grandmother, in horrendous circumstances.
The conclusion that was drawn was that it was accidental.
We were never satisfied that the initial findings of the coroner were accurate.
It's shocking what's happened. Was this an accidental fire or wasn't it?
You're determined to get to the truth.
This is something he clearly thought about for a long period of time.
I was with someone in a house that I had no clue about.
It just goes to show you don't know your neighbours.
They feel like they're fooling society or they're fooling the people around them.
In the game of truth or dare, he had confessed that he'd killed somebody. And when the counsellor has probed further, that's when he said that he'd killed somebody.
You've got to follow the evidence. The way that it was unfolding was very unusual.
Has he done this, or is he just making it up?
We had to put him to the scene if we were going to prove that he was responsible for murder.
Worst case scenario was that somebody else could have been a victim and we just didn't know about it.
Mary Gregory was 94 years old and she was discovered under the table in her conservatory in her smoke-filled bungalow in Heysham in Lancashire in the early hours of the 28th of May 2018. Tragically, she later died in hospital 4 days later. A Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service investigation concluded that the most probable cause of death was like a dropped cigarette because she was a smoker. And a coroner even reached a verdict of accidental death. So to all intents and purposes, this was just, a tragic accident, but the plot thickens. Because the police reopened the case a year later after Mrs. Gregory's step-grandson, Tiernan Darnton, admitted during a counselling session that he killed her. The 21-year-old said he'd used a lighter to set fire to the curtains. And during the police inquiry, it emerged that he'd made a similar confession several weeks after the death when he revealed his darkest secret during a game of truth or dare with two friends. It also emerged during the police investigation that it was a lot more calculated and malicious than it might seem at first. So to be specific, Darnton did things like he took off two smoke alarms and he locked a door knowing that his step-grandmother would not be able to escape. And then during the game of truth or dare, he said, and I quote, "I have a secret I haven't told anybody. I may have killed somebody." During his trial, the judge said, and again, I quote, "Murder had been on your mind for some time. On your own evidence, you were fascinated by serial killers and their crimes. You had dark thoughts." an understatement if you ask me. And then later, an examination of Darnton's mobile phone and his laptop found searches like, and I quote, "I'm a murderer, I'm a monster, I'm going to hell, I want to cause evil, and urge to kill again." It's not looking great for him, is it? The student, who was 17 at the time of the fire, also searched for under 18 murder. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a bit of background about Tiernan Darnton. And while I'm doing this, I would like you, my Psych for Sore guys and gals, to see if you can look out for clues that would explain, not excuse, nobody's excusing his behaviour, but explain his behaviour, potentially start thinking like a forensic psychiatrist. Some of the things I'm going to say are very obvious, some of them are a bit more subtle, so I challenge you to pick out the subtle ones. Okay, so let's talk about Darnton. So he's born on the 17th September 2000. He was raised initially by his mother, Jessica Darnton. He has an older brother who lived separately from the family since the age of 16, and his father is unknown. At the age of 12, Darnton moved to Lancashire to live with his stepfather, Chris Gregory, who is the son of the victim, and Darnton was homeschooled by Chris because Darnton had always struggled with his education and struggled to fit in at school. During his teenage years, Darnton attended a local homeschooling group in Lancaster. He attended regularly, but never participated in any of the activities that they organised outside of this, so extracurricular activities. So I think it's fair to say he was a bit of a loner, he was a bit kind of isolated. By the time Darnton had reached sixth form age, he attended a college, but he dropped out of one college, then he joined another. I think it's fair to say that he struggled to settle in either. According to those that knew him, he was described as a quiet, polite boy, but also an odd character with dark interests, including collecting Nazi memorabilia and a morbid fascination with serial killers and with death. One of his friends from his homeschooling group said that Darnton once mentioned to him that if he were to commit suicide, he would want to take people with him so he'd be remembered. And he also had an interest in school shooters, particularly those that did the Columbine High School massacre. It's also been speculated that Darnton might be autistic as he struggled to connect with people, meaning conversation didn't come to him naturally and he didn't really have many close friends. On top of all of that, he drank alcohol and he was a smoker, and it's believed that he took recreational drugs. That came out in his trial. Okay, so that's all the background. Now I'm going to cut in the personal analysis that I gave for this documentary. And while you're watching this, I'd like to see which of the key factors you managed to pick out yourself. Good luck.
In terms of psychiatric assessment, we know that Darnton had depression, he had anxiety, he had suicidal thoughts, and he probably had autism. My name's Dr. 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐜𝐡 𝐅𝐸𝐬𝐲𝐜𝐡 I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. So I assess and rehabilitate mentally disordered offenders, usually in courts, in prisons, and in secure psychiatric units. There seems to be different elements to Darnton. On the one hand, he is, or at least tries to be, quite socially polite, although he is a little bit awkward in his interactions. He's not a great conversationalist, for example. Yet there's also this darker aspect to him. And so what are the numerous factors that in combination might increase his risk of carrying out a heinous murder? And for me, Darnton's quite fascinating because there's so many of them. He's somebody who's isolated, he's withdrawn, he doesn't really fit in socially, he doesn't really have many friends or a social circle. He's not particularly close to family members. Nobody knows who his father is. He had minimal contact with his mother. He was homeschooled. He didn't spend a lot of time with kids his age. And even when he had the opportunity to do so, he was a bit socially recluse. And you add into that this fascination with serial killers, and you have somebody that's probably having quite dark thoughts without any healthy input to neutralize them. There's a couple of different reasons why somebody might confess to a murder. I think the main one is guilt and shame. But I do wonder if when Darnton was making this confession, there was an element of bravado, a bit of him showing off. It reeks of desperation to me. It feels like he's almost willing to divulge anything just to try and make new friends. The very fact that he was so cryptic, that it wasn't a full confession, that it really had to be coaxed out of him, makes me think that it was more about naivety. I think that part of it was him being socially isolated, and part of it might have been related to his autism. Now, I want to make the point that categorically people with autistic spectrum disorder are not dangerous. But if you have all these other factors, particularly a fascination with the morbid, with serial killers and autism, then an individual can become quite obsessed and fascinated with this, that it goes past a healthy degree. I think it all ties into his personality, somebody who's isolated, who's lonely, doesn't have that much human contact. I don't think he really gets how suspicious his actions and his words were. We know that Darnton had no relationship with his father and a turbulent relationship with his mother. So Chris was pretty much the only stable person in his life, the only person that really looked out for him. You know, he treated him like Darnton was actually his son. So one question we have to ask ourselves is why would Darnton risk all of that and attack Chris's mother?
Okay, so I hope you found that interesting. So what is the lesson that we can all learn from this? Absolutely, definitely, 100% categorically, do not kill anybody. Don't kill people, kids. It's not cool. But if you do something a little bit milder for truth or dare. Don't use a mobile phone and laptop and use searches like "I'm a murderer" and, you know, just be a bit more subtle. So that's it from me. I urge you to subscribe because not only will it help me out immeasurably, but if you do, you will never lose your keys again, guaranteed, or your money back. That's enough from me. Have a blessed day. Watch the rest of my videos and do not forget, I love you.